Hello and welcome to a special edition of Command Protocols. This is a new series of videos we're going to be doing where we're going to be interviewing other faction specialists about the Necron matchup and how their faction lines up with ours. On the first one, hot off the press, we have Ratnu Vaidya, who is a Chaos Knight specialist. You finished rank 1 ITC last year, I believe, and
Yes.
currently number 2.
I need to look, but probably.
Currently number 2, you and Jay from Mohawk Miniatures seem to be having a really good battle. You won it last year. He's currently winning this year, but it's very close. So I'm sure you can pull ahead at London. And you recently finished second at the Leeds Super-Major. So congratulations on that one.
Thank
Finishing
you.
second to Josh is everyone's done it. It's almost like winning in itself, right? I mean, I know because it happened to me in Bristol, the previous tournament, but it's nothing to be sad. You just don't get the trophy. That's the only difference. You just don't get a trophy. But congratulations on that one. You obviously took Chaos Knights. Why did you take the list that you took? So let's put it on the screen and show everyone what the list is.
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes without saying that Chaos Knights have had quite a big shake-up in the past month with new codex and very kind of sweeping points changes. And I think initially, sort of pivoting away from War Dog spam, it felt like I was learning a whole new army. I've played something like 250 games of just War Dogs, and then to kind of go from that to being like, oh my goodness, there's options. There's like detachment rules. There's the stratagems beyond walk through walls. So I think the kind of choice of detachment was essentially a counter meta pick
Okay.
in the sense that I was expecting to see a lot of Imperial Knights. I was expecting to see a lot of Death Guard. I was expecting to see a lot of things like Blood Angels. So having tools that could deal with those three factions predominantly were kind of high on the list. So Infernal Lance as a kind of detachment and a kind of suite of rules is very much a sort of toolkit focus where you can do surges in the command phase. You quote unquote empower your little models or your big models, and then they can get various buffs. So you can get +3 move, which I think is the most impactful. You can get lethal or sustained on all of your weapons. And then defensively, you can get 5 up invul, 6 up feel no pain, which is one of the kind of few ways outside of the Forge World Knights to get an invul in melee, which is otherwise Knight's big weakness.
Yeah, I noticed that's a really powerful stratagem. However, you said you were thinking there's going to be a lot of Imperial Knights, but you only took one Atropos, which seems to be like the anti-Knight Knight.
Yeah. So weirdly, in kind of testing, I found that the double Gatling gun despoilers with lethal plus ignores cover, because they're all kind of volume strength 6 AP 2 damage. With the lethals with the ignores cover, they really punch up, and with
Yeah.
the toughness changes from T12 to T11, it becomes twice as effective into things like your Canis.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. Matt, when he saw the pairings for round 4, was like, "Oh my god, he's got all this melter. What am I going to do?" I'm like, Matt, he's got 4 Gatling cannons at 622, and you've got -1 damage. Like, you should be okay here. But obviously, the game went in your favor. So, when you built this list, did you think about Necrons at all? Like, were you thinking, what happens if I come up against 40 warriors or 18 wraiths?
Mhm. I think 18 wraiths was a sort of a question that needed addressing. I think that because the points cuts to wraiths and the points cuts to the technomancer, I believe, meant that that kind of archetype became viable again. Um, it meant that at least an element of list construction would be okay. If I'm facing this, what do I actually have to do? And on sort of practice games on TTS, I played against a kind of a big warrior brick army with this very same list, and I lost because there's nothing you can do about the kind of primary control. About in my head, I thought Gatman could take them out in a single activation. It killed 8, and it was like, oh
Yeah.
no, okay, you're now on 4 objectives, and I cannot interact with you at all.
Yeah, 36 shots sounds like a lot of shots, but when you break it down from you got to hit, you got to wound, and then they got to throw a pinball, it's remarkable just how little you actually kill when you think about it, unless you
Yeah.
spike, which you can do. But so when you saw Matt's list for round 4, which was a Basin's Phalanx with a Tesseract Vault, a
Yeah.
Silent King, two DDAs. What were your first thoughts?
I mean, my first thought was I need to Google what the definition of a base sense is because I'd never.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't do much. You get like a few of our models get +1 to wound. That's it. Like
Yeah,
it's the word is so bad compared to it for a moment. But the king wounds everything on twos with his big guns, which is kind of important.
yeah.
So, did you obviously you had overnight to work out a game plan? What was the game plan that you came up with for that game?
So I was actually chatting with Mark Cromblehome, who we later played, and he was just like, "Yeah, just send it. There's nothing you can do about it."
Yeah,
Um, Inherently, I'm quite a passive defensive player, so kind of taking an initiative and kind of taking a lead aggressively feels very kind of antithetical to how the kind of normal play style is. I think I didn't play optimally against Matt. It was first time on stream. You know, it's quite nervous. Matt's an incredibly competent player. He knows
mm.
really what he's doing. Um, but I think that the macro can be sort of fundamentally boiled down to: do I want to kill the big things, or do I want to kill the little things? And
Okay,
because he had bottom of turn, I thought it's more important to kill the little things because the
nice.
sort of storing pieces going up and down and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I always tell people. Like, oh, I'm playing Necrons. What do I do? It's like if you can kill the big stuff, go for it. But otherwise, just focus on all the scoring, all the other chaff. Make them hold the home objective with a DDA. You know that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, did the game plan work? Like, did you do what you set out to do, or did Matt stop you from doing that?
hmm Um, I think Matt sort of enabled my game plan in some respects. So I think turn one or turn two, he gave me his Ophydians and his Triumph Praetorians,
Right.
which were
Okay.
kind of two out of the three and a half scoring pieces that he
Mm,
had, which meant that the rest of the army wasn't as mobile. Sort of from that kind of turn two, turn three, there was still a lot of killy output left. You know, they're both DDAs. That there's the king, there was the vault, but what it meant was he couldn't effectively threaten my natural expansion.
okay.
Um, so I knew that sort of over the course of the game I'd be getting 8 8 8 on linchpin. So it's about how much can I interfere with his score, given that he's got bottom of turn primary.
Yeah, so this game was on stream, and what we're going to do with Matt is we're going to actually watch the stream and go through the game and analyze it from our point of view when we finally ever get time, because like we never get time to do anything together because we just work opposite shifts, which is why I'm doing this by myself. So obviously you played against Mark in round 7, who is your
Mhm.
teammate as well, right? From Dead Red
Yes.
Gaming. Was
Yeah.
that is this a matchup you've played before, or is it with Mark specifically, or was that new to you?
So Canoptic Core was actually one of the newer ones to me. I think last time I played it was when it was very, very good earlier in the edition. And I only joined Dead Red, I think, less than a year ago.
Okay.
So the only times I've ever played Mark has been on TCS when we've been practicing
Mm,
Chaos Knight Mirrors.
right.
Because
Chaos Knight
he's
Mirrors.
also he's also playing Chaos Knights for a while.
Mm,
Um, so I think against the 18 wraiths, it's about trying to do what they do but better. It's
okay.
a big, durable OC intensive piece that will just sit on points and stay on points.
And do nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Initially, it was quite concerning with the toughness breakpoints because wraiths at strength 6, AP1, 2 damage, wound knights twice as effectively, the
Mm,
big knights at least, going from T12 to T11. But fundamentally the output just isn't quite there to reliably pick them up, which just meant that even with my shooting knights, initially I was like a little bit reserved about putting them on points. But in the early game, when I saw that across like a turn and a half of combat, it wasn't really doing much to a big knight, I was like, okay, if I just push, maybe I'll just get 15s. And
yeah.
that's unfortunately what ended up happening.
Fair. So obviously the game plan was different going into Mark. You didn't have anyone to talk to, I guess, because obviously Mark was your go-to guy. Um, so if you went to play that matchup now, would you play it differently? Would you run at him turn one and just go, I'm going to stand on all the points and you're going to do nothing about it? Is that what would you do?
I think you still need to respect the incidental output in the sense that the wraiths can do the mortals. You've got scarabs that can blow up in your face, which are anti-vehicle, um,
Yeah.
and things like the Doomstalkers will still do a number
Okay.
into knights. So when it all starts to sort of chip up, then a knight can get bracketed, which is probably the worst element because then you're losing your advantage, which is the OC.
Okay. So, which was the easier game? Like from a Chaos Knight's perspective, if you looked at Matt's list or Mark's list and chose one to play against, if you had to win, gun to your head kind of thing, which would you rather play against?
I prefer to play against 18 wraiths from a kind of able to win this game perspective. But from a fun perspective, it's literally just rolling dice, rolling dice, rolling dice, fours, fives, fours, fives.
Yeah. Yeah, they're tough to deal with. I find that they don't have the damage output. If you've got all those points in Wraiths, if you can stand at the front of an objective with your big knight, I'm never getting on there with Wraiths anyway, and I'm going to struggle to kill you because
Yeah.
at best I can kill one big knight a turn, and as soon as you tag me in combat, I'm not doing any mortals. So all of a sudden you've got a few pistol shots, which might do a couple of dev wounds, and then you're running on fives in melee, and you probably just push us back at some point, and then as soon as you see the Technomancer, you just kill the Technomancer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if somebody turned up with 40, 60 warriors, what would you do against those?
Probably suffer is the long
Okay.
and short of it. I think that Chaos Knight output generally tends to be high quality but lower volume. If you think about kind of um, things like the Atropos is supremely swingy. It's D6 plus D3 shots. You've got 12 attacks on a sweep. Yeah, it might be damage too, but I'm not against warriors who are one wound. It's not going to be super efficient or kind of super effective. So answering kind of hordes is something that old Chaos Knights did really well with, things like mass brigands, mass carnivores, mass havocs. But I think we would definitely struggle into an archetype that was just, I'm going to set on points better than you.
But Wraiths kind of do that as well, right? But they're easier to kill, I guess.
It's the fact that you have fewer models with the same OC.
Well, I would suggest that they should use the Barge for OC3, specifically with Wraiths, because then
That
they
sounds
just
like a
need
really
less models on there, but no one listens to me.
yes, but the fact that the warriors and the wraiths are the same OC, and warriors getting to OC3 means that you just need 4 to take a point off a big knight, which is not a lot of warriors.
No, it's not. So that was what you'd be scared of the most, not from a damage point of view, but just from a I'm not going to hold primary this game kind of point of view.
Yeah, I think what would be kind of most terrifying is the opportunity for damage. So even if you've got a couple of DDAs, you need to factor that into, okay, you might spike. If I just walk onto a point, if you stay still, that's dev wounds, that kind of element where the risk of damage forces you to play differently.
Okay, so my list was more damage focused. I had
Yeah.
the rerolls from the King and the Barge and 3 DDAs. So if I was playing against you, would you push out like you did against Matt, or would you play a lot more reserved?
It depends on who had first or second turn, I imagine.
Okay.
Just having a quick look at your list now. So sort of when you, at least from kind of my perspective, when you're looking at opponents' lists, it's what's killy, what's scory, and what's either of the other, and seeing what you have fewer of and trying to take that down.
Yeah.
So I think the triple DDA with the king is really really scary. Um, but if you get that down to say one DDA in the king and just outcompete primary and just keep denying and try and attrition for kind of 4 turns out of the 5, then you can get maybe a slight points advantage.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So, when you were playing a game, you picked Dread Orders, right? Did you always pick one, or did you roll for them?
Every time I've rolled, I've always rolled a duplicate. So I enjoy the kind of consistency and the reliability of knowing what my army rule is going to be.
Okay, so what do you think the best orders are against us? Like, if you knew you're playing Necrons, you had a game plan. What aura do you think you're picking on turns like one? Is it 1, 3, and 5? You pick.
Yeah. So if I'm against a very sort of shooty Star Shatter archetype like yours, it probably the -1 to hit
Okay.
outside 18. Because then it forces the Necron player into a choice of, does your king want to go ignore modifiers, or does it want to go reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1?
Yeah.
Um, and then you're trying to sort of dampen efficiency ever so slightly. In the
Okay.
grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter. The king is the king, and he's gonna pick up some big stompy robots
Hopefully.
against an archetype like wraith spam or like warrior spam. Because the Necron reanimation happens after the battle shock step, going battle shock below starting strength and chipping can help to kind of mitigate some of the OC advantage that Necrons may have with some of
Okay.
those.
That's that's good to know. So you would never pick the one where you do mortals if I fail against Necrons.
Unless it's highly situational. Let's say you've got a really important piece left on one or two wounds, and killing that may swing an element of the game. Then yeah, but otherwise it's always going to be battleshot below starting or the stealth.
Okay, that's good to know because it's good for us to plan. Like if we know that that's what you're thinking, then we know that we can maybe I'll ignore mods with the king and use the rerolls from the badge. So UKTC terrain has changed
Mm-hmm.
since last year. Has that changed how you need to approach the match with your models? Do you find it easier or harder to get around the table, hold primary or hide? What's your thoughts there?
I think it's still early days with the terrain, and what's really interesting is that they mentioned in the feedback that half of it said it was too shooty, half of it said it was too choppy.
Yes.
um, I think that knights, and particularly big knights when they're aggressively costed like now, will benefit quite a lot, just purely because a lot of the anti-shooting defense is built around having terrain in the right places, but knights can sort of circumvent that in some respects by having the towering keyword.
Hmm.
So, for instance, on this kind of search and destroy map, there's one of the small L's on the left-hand side of your home that you could sort of stage up to. Touching that means that you have lines to 3 objectives out of the 4 on missions like hidden supplies. So suddenly, with a sort of long-range shooting platform and a consistent long-range shooting platform, you can just touch a terrain feature, see 3 objectives, and remain reasonably uninteractive, particularly when you factor in things like the stealth.
Yeah. So the detachment you took as well doesn't have the move through walls for the small dogs, does it? Right?
No,
How
no.
much did you miss that? Like, how much does that matter when it comes to picking what army you're going to play or what detachment? Sorry.
So the move through walls is only in the index and one of the enhancements for the War Dog spam list. I think that because the big knights can move over terrain in the movement phase, it essentially means that you can mitigate some of that element. So moving through terrain, risking battle shock, which is fine most of the time, but then sort of towing onto things with the towering still lets you achieve a lot. So I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would.
Okay, that's fair. But you're also only playing 3 carnivores instead of the brigands and like the 13 or 14 war dog spam. So I guess it's nice to put the big knights on the table now after all this time.
Yes, yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is.
So one thing I've noticed was Lords of Dread seems to be the front runner in terms of detachment. But
Mhm.
last week, Infernal Lance took a bit of a step forward and is now better in terms of win rate than Lords of Dread. So why do you think that is? Do you think it's Chaos Knight players have worked out that that's the better detachment, or do you think it's just random from this week?
I think over the weekend there were 4 players on
Mm.
Infernal Lance.
Yeah.
Uh, if you take me out, then I think it's 7 wins, 8 losses. So it sort of so having one or like a
Mm.
handful of players doing really well can sort of skew the results, particularly when there's a small sample size. I think Lords is something that people really like because of the OC5 sticky,
Mm.
but I think a counter meta pick to that is just having OC6 that can move around well um, and go on points, and suddenly you're not as good.
So this is one of the. So how many times did you use the OC sticky? No, well, you don't have the OC sticky. You just have a sticky strat in your detachment. How many
Yeah,
times did you use that throughout the tournament, roughly?
probably less than 5.
Okay, because we have this unit called Ophydian destroyers, which you know because you killed Mats really early,
Yeah.
and we hate them. We don't think that they're as good as they possibly could be. A
Hmm.
lot of people have been playing them, and we've tried them, we keep putting them in a list, and we're always disappointed. But as soon as we saw the Chaos Knights book, we're like, oh wow, okay, you've got OC5 sticky. That's a real problem. Do you think we actually need to waste our 80 points to put these Ophydians in on the off chance that you decide to stick an objective with OC5? Because if my reading of the rule is right, that it's not necessarily OC5. If you've got a big knight and you stick it, it's OC10 or whatever the big knights are, right?
So the wording of the rule is that it counts as being OC5 and you hold it until your opponent's level of control is
Yeah.
higher than yours. So that's why you need 6 or more. Are Ophidians OC2 apiece?
Yeah, so they're OC6.
Yeah,
You see, and unless you're playing Hypocrite where you can uppy downy anything,
yeah,
obviously these guys uppy down at the end. And most of the time when I play them, I pick them up, I get my cards, I go, all right, and they go back down where they were originally. And they do that for 3 or 4 turns until I go, okay, I'll get 2 points with them and throw them away.
yeah.
But do you think we need to put them in our list? Is it a big deal for you? Like, would it make how you play the game change, knowing that you can't use that strategy because we can just go, oh, now it's mine?
Yes, massively. Any sort of OC6 uppy downy, OC6 deep strike is huge because it turns off one of the biggest elements of that Lords of Dread, which is the flexibility to sticky points, move off, and still try and play the game. When you're kind of choreographed in where you're going to be and where you're going to stay as a kind of Knights player, it means that your opponent can leverage their output much better against you. If you're sort of forced to have to screen out an objective that you thought was safe, then that's pretty big. So I think that single 80-point unit will force a lot of decisions for your opponent.
See, I hate your answer. I want you to say, nah, we don't care. They're just useless. Don't bother playing them. And I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But now you're going, oh, no, I really. So if you saw them on the table, would you actively make a decision to maybe throw away one of your smaller knights to try and kill them at the start so that you didn't have to worry about it later? Or, you
If I was
know,
playing Lords of Dread, absolutely, because you want to leverage that high OC as quickly, as early, and as kind of effectively as possible. If throwing away a Carnival means that you're not going to score 15, 20 primary and create that differential from helping me not score primary, then absolutely.
so what you're saying is we should play 2 units and then put one out there as bait to force you to come out with a big knight to try and kill him, and then we kill the big knight, and then we've still got one left. I see. Matt's not going to like this because he doesn't like them either. Okay, so great. Now we have to play Ophidians because the Knights player says they're really good into him.
Just give it 2 months. People will move on. The points cost will go up. They cannot stay as they are now, and then suddenly you'll see Knights completely tail off.
I mean, if you look at the overall win rate of Knights, it was actually only 49% last week, despite you going 7-0. So, do you think the points actually do need to change?
I think that any world in which you can take 6 big knights is probably not a fun world for your sort of regular opponent. I think sort of very competent players like yourselves will immediately have really excellent game plans and know exactly what to do. I think Games Workshop has to balance that fine line of players like you and sort of players like Jim at your local club on a Friday who just want to, rock up and have fun.
That's always been the problem with big knights, really, hasn't it? When they're good,
Yeah,
they're too good, and when they're not good, no one wants to play them, and they just sit on the shelf.
definitely.
So, what do you think your best knight into Necrons is? Like, if we were sat across the battlefield and you were playing one of each knight, the big ones, for example, which is kind of the one that I need to focus on the most?
I mean, it's not a knight, but I'd be worried about the Nurglings just because when they're kind of allied in,
Yeah.
you I think the whole kind of macro about efficient Necrons is being able to get good lines and being able to leverage your output in a consistent way. So having a cheap screening throwaway piece that can just move block where those lines are going to be means that you then can't leverage that, and then it lets the big knights do big knight things. The actual chassis themselves aren't massively relevant. It's a big stompy robot that's either going to punch you really hard, shoot you really hard, or some kind of combination of them both. Um, so I think so the sort of thinking laterally, things that will stop you achieving what you want to do is probably more scary to a Necron player. That makes sense.
I mean, I genuinely hate Nurglings. Like, when I used to play Devolting Hypercrypt and I would see Nurglings on the other side of the table, I would actively indirect out the Nurglings instead of something else that they're, like, really scared of and hiding at the back, because I know that those Nurglings are going to annoy me for the whole game in terms of screening out areas or just move blocking or, like you say, just being annoying and tagging things and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, not a lot of nice players are taking the Nurglings. How did they perform this week, by the way?
I think that sort of my list will always start with at least one unit, and then the Chaos Knights come afterwards, because they just open up so much for the army. Being able to be kind of low impact, low commitment piece that can influence where people put models.
Okay.
It's always really helpful. They killed a combi lieutenant. Great. I think that's the only thing that they killed, but they stopped people achieving
Yeah.
what they sort of wanted to achieve.
But they're not there to kill. But common lieutenants, yeah, I'm glad they killed that guy. I hate that little guy. He's so annoying to deal with. So the next question is about Catan. So as soon as I saw that knights are going to be a thing, I was working, trying to build a list with, the Nightbringer, the Void Dragon. If you saw Catan across the table, are you happy or are you sad? Because they're 300 points, kind of hard to kill, but you've got Knight Lancers and stuff that can just come along and just swat them aside.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be scared if I had, like, the Nightbringer and a Void Dragon, or would you just try and avoid them and ignore them the whole game?
I think Chaos Knights, at least the build that I was running, is far less efficient into Catan than Dog Spam was, because there's very few sources of Melter. There's lots of like consistent damage 2, damage 4, even damage 8, but obviously you make that halved.
Yeah.
I think as an opponent, the mobility of the Catan's quite limited, but you're creating that kind of 18-inch keep away zone where it's saying, if you come within 18, the Void Dragon is going to poke you to death, and he's going to, blast you, and he's going to do all this other stuff. So I think as a sort of movement or keep away piece, I think they're really good, but I'm not sure that their damage is particularly against defensively focused lists like mine. But I'm not sure the damage will be as consistent as opposed to say into Imperial Knights or against other detachments.
Yeah, the Nightbringer and Canis have had a lot of good times, but the Nightbringer hates the Lancer. I noticed, though, that you didn't have a Lancer.
Yeah.
Why? Just out of curiosity. I know we're not a Chaos Knight channel, but I was curious myself as to why you went for the Rampager instead of the Lancer.
So the Lancer's kind of key benefits are it's got +2 move relative to the Rampager. It's got a permanent 4-up invul, so you're not spending CP on rotate. But other than that, the Rampager is better in almost every regard. The Lancer's tank shock isn't massively impactful because you only really want to use it to get below a damage gate. So if you've got something that's got like say 20 wounds, it's only actually impactful if you're dealing 4 wounds or more, because then you hit it to that 16 wound breakpoint where your 2 pokes will then kill it. But the Rampager can become a pseudo Lancer with the detachment ability of the 5-up invul and the 6-up feel no pain. You got CP for rotate, but you have better, more consistent output.
Okay. So you can rotate in combat once you give it an invul?
You can't rotate in combat, but you can get a 5-up invul in combat and a 6-up feel
with
no
the
pain.
feel no pain, which is like playing Imperial Knights, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I hate the 6-up feel no pain. Okay, so if I was to play against you, you were playing this list, and I took Bring It Down and Assassinate, would you be happy or sad?
I think I'd be happy. There are enough low commitment pieces that I can draw out your big damage dealers. I think Bring It Down and Assassinate into lists that aren't Lords of Dread is probably a trap in some respects.
Okay.
A list that a list that has like lots of long range shooting like mine, you can effectively play keep away, trying to get an angle here and there, try and shoot one thing at a time. The carnivores, the kind of beasts of Nurgle, the Nurglings will move block and let me try and play the mission, and only when the sort of damage dealers are dealt with will the big knights then start to come out.
Okay. That's it's good to know, because a lot of people think that Assassinate Bring It Down is the thing to go for, because it's like, well, you have to come out to play, right? You have to stand on objectives. If you do, then we'll just kill you and we'll score loads of secondaries. But you definitely can play around, your knight comes out, it takes loads of damage, you then hide it, you kill what came out, and I never see that knight again. And all of a sudden, I'm looking down, and it's turn 4, and I've only got 6 secondary points.
Yeah.
So you'd recommend not to take Bring It Down Assassinate, unless we were playing against you specifically, and then you're happy for us to take it, right?
Yeah. So when people take it, I mean, outside of Imatech, the CP economy really starts to suffer. Not having the flexibility to discard tactical, gain the CP, leverage more of your strats. I think that's a massive plus for an opposing knight player.
Okay, so if I was to play against you, what would be the one thing you didn't want to see me doing on the table against you?
I would not want you to just push with everything because
Okay.
because you're still so durable, and because the output is not that good. Like, it's good, but it's not Star Shatter output, is it? So if you give it a knight player too many things to try and deal with, because your army is just a lot of defensive 4-ups. If you pass that stat check, ironically doing it better than us, the game just starts to sort of go into failure cascade the second a few too many resources die.
You see, it's funny because the one thing I really hate Knights players doing is just full setting their entire army turn 1. Because then I'm looking at it going, well, I haven't got enough to deal with what you've got. And you're sat there on the opposite side going, I don't want you to go full send turn 1 because I haven't got enough to deal with what you've got. That's a very interesting dynamic because the hardest games I've ever played against Knights are when they just go, right, I'm trying to advance everything through. Here's all the big Knights, here's all the little Knights. Have a turn shooting me. After that, I'm going to be in your face. Every carnival's going to be in melee. The rampage is going to be in melee.
That's really interesting.
It is actually really interesting. I don't know what's going on here because I thought you'd be like, oh yeah, the best thing for you to do is just step out and then I can pick you off bit by bit. But
So I think the sort of like worst thing in the world is when people literally just like move the DDAs onto points, and I'm like, okay, I've got to invest so much to like try and kill that DDA, because if I don't kill it, it's going to score primary. If I do kill it, everything else can see me, and even if I tag it but don't kill it, you still then got lines to everything that's not in combat.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think we'd have to actually play this out and see how it goes because the easiest games I ever have against Chaos Knights is when they just here's three dogs. Okay, I'll kill 3 dogs. Here's 4 dogs. Right, okay, I'll kill 4 dogs. And after 4 turns of doing that, they've got 2 dogs left, and I've got half my army. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, when I played Imperial Knights specifically, I know it's not the same, but it's similar chassis. When he threw everything at me, I was like, oh my god, what do I do? Like, if I focus on this flank kills me. And if I focus on the middle, then the 2 flanks kill me. And if I ignore the middle, I've got a Lancer just sat in my face.
Yeah.
Or in your case, a Rampager. Yeah, it's a good one, though. I'll have to think about that. I didn't think there would be an easy answer, but I didn't think it would be the polar opposite of what I was expecting. I'll be really honest.
Particularly if you've got first turn and you just shove forwards. I don't think the output is consistent enough to. It's sort of in a similar kind of mirror. I don't think it's consistent enough to actually deal the right damage in the right places.
Okay, well, I'm going to try that. I'm actually going to try that. I have a few friends who play Chaos Knights. I'm just going to take the list that I've took. I'm just going to literally, because that's not how I play as well. I play a little more cagey. I utilize my long range. I utilize my durability because, like a Scorpec Lord, still needs more than one knight looking at it because it's got a 4-up invul. You can roll low on your shots. So I utilize those to try and draw you out and then pick you off bit by bit. But yeah, I guess I'll have a think about that one. That's pretty interesting. Okay, and then is there an easy way of beating Chaos Knights? If I had to tailor my list specifically to beat yours, what units apart from 3DDAs and the Silent King, obviously, would you not want to see on the table?
I would not want to see things like Tomb Blades, not because they're any good, but because you can move, shoot, move, and if you block where a knight can land, sort of similar to how the Nurglings operate, where if you look at what the lines for next turn are going to be, if you look at kind of where a knight can land and move within an inch of the base, you physically cannot move there. Okay. I think stuff that can influence knights' movement is probably some of the biggest things. Necrons in most lists will just have the output to deal with it. if you're bringing a few DDAs, if you're bringing things like Vault, if you're bringing things like the King, if you're bringing things like you were talking about, like the Catan, you will just pick up knights kind of over the course of the game. But if you stop knights moving, that's the biggest element, I think.
Yeah. Well, my last game against Imperial Knights, the guy had was it a Valiant, the one with the big anti-Titanic 12 damage flat. I realised it only had 4 attacks in melee, so I just charged it with 5 flayed ones, and it couldn't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. All right, so I think that's kind of all the questions I've got, really. Do you have any shout-outs you want to give to anybody?
Yeah, so if you're in the northeast of England, I play at a club called Clubhouse. There's a weekly sort of competitive Warhammer night every Wednesday. I go on the Warhammer Discord quite a lot. There's a really friendly kind of community for people who enjoy chaos of all kind of different types. But yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for joining me. I hope we've helped people with their Chaos Knight ideas. But yeah, other than that, cheers. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Remember to like and subscribe and comment as well. If you've got any questions for Ratnu, just put them in the video and I'm sure he'll maybe pop back and have a look. But yeah, thanks very much. Cheers.